Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to guide you through this deep dive because we are exploring a truly unexpected collision today. We're looking at how massive macro geopolitics, cross-border waste logistics, and cutting-edge AI technology are all just slamming into each other in real time. It's like a giant puzzle, where decisions made in Washington and Ottawa actually dictate the fate of a local disposal yard. And the crazy part, the solution isn't being hammered out in some corporate boardroom, but right in the palm of a yard operator's hand. All right, let's just dive right into this.
So I want you to think about this for a second. What actually happens when global trade wars target your trash, right? Because when we hear about international trade friction, our minds usually go straight to things like steel, aluminum, or auto parts. But as high-level trade tensions really heat up between Washington and Ontario, there is a massive, entirely unseen local supply chain that is suddenly caught right in the crossfire. We are talking about the literal, physical movement of garbage. And the stakes here? Well, they are absolutely massive.
3.46 million. That is the exact number of tons of municipal solid waste, or MSW, that get shipped annually from Ontario right over to Michigan. When international tariffs threaten to freeze borders, they aren't just stopping cars or dairy products, they are threatening to back up 3.46 million tons of trash into a province that, frankly, is already running out of room to put it. To put that into perspective, it's a stunning macro to micro realization of just how deeply integrated and how incredibly vulnerable our waste corridors truly are.
So here is our roadmap for today's Explainer. We're going to quickly cover tariffs and trade tensions, the transboundary waste crisis, 905 wood, the sentient bridge, the digital refinery workflow, and finally, securing the circular bioeconomy.
Okay, starting with part one, tariffs and trade tensions. Now, to really understand this local logistics crisis, we first have to set the geopolitical stage and look at the rapid escalation we've seen in year-to-date headline news trends. If we sort through the date-time metadata of recent events, a very clear timeline emerges. The current landscape is completely defined by these intense, ongoing U.S.-Canada tariff disputes. On July 1, 2026, the USMCA Joint Review formally opened, which essentially threw the whole continental trading framework into this volatile review cycle. Then, by July 20, President Donald Trump signed proclamations using Section 338 of the Tariff Act of 1930 to impose 50% tariffs on covered Canadian imports. And the ticking clock here? August 19, 2026. That is when these tariffs are scheduled to take full effect. It really highlights the sheer vulnerability of the entire USMCA and customer framework to sudden executive action.
And, unsurprisingly, this has triggered a really sharp response. Ontario Premier Doug Ford stated flatly, if these tariffs proceed, Canada should respond tariff for tariff, dollar for dollar. Impartially speaking, this kind of geopolitical brinkmanship creates profound operational risk. When leaders talk about dollar-for-dollar retaliation, they're effectively threatening to freeze the critical, deeply integrated North American supply chains that everyday businesses just absolutely rely on to function.
Moving on to part two, the transboundary waste crisis.
So while the diplomats are, laser-focused on autos and agriculture, there is this huge physical blind spot in the trade talks: the movement of actual garbage across the U.S. border. Ontario exports roughly 27% of its total landfilled waste directly into the United States. And this MSW, it makes up a staggering 14.35% of all waste disposed of in Michigan state landfills. Just think about that for a second. More than 14% of the trash sitting in Michigan landfills came from Canada. This transboundary flow has always been driven by pure economics. It's simply been cheaper to truck industrial and commercial waste across the border than to handle it locally. But under the shadow of a trade war, this dependency suddenly turns into a massive liability.
And this dynamic is reaching a total boiling point. We know 3.46 million tons are exported annually. But get this, Michigan has actually proposed raising its tipping fee surcharge from just 36 cents up to $5 per ton to deter these imports. If you combine that kind of financial penalty with the threat of a closed border due to tariffs, the capacity cliffs we're looking at are alarming. If the border remains open, Ontario exhausts its landfill capacity by 2037, but if the border closes in this trade war, that cliff accelerates to 2034. That is just 9 years away, folks. This shrinking timeline has sparked intense legislative panic in Ontario, driving controversial deregulation efforts like Bill 5 just to try and fast-track domestic dump sites. I mean, it is a genuine, real-time crisis.
Which brings us to part three, 905 wood, the sentient bridge. So the big question is, how does an industry survive when both the geopolitical infrastructure and the physical landfill infrastructure are collapsing at the same time? To understand the technological solution, you really have to understand the gap it bridges.
On one side, you have total physical chaos, unregulated construction waste, chaotic piles of wood, dirt, and dust just sitting in a yard. And on the flip side, you have digital precision, the ultra-strict, high-purity requirements of the global circular biocarbon market. 9.5 Wood acts as what we call the sentient bridge between these two totally different worlds. It is this elegant digital palette cleanser that takes chaotic physical trash and turns it into a highly structured, duty-free commodity.
Now, the secret sauce to this bridge is a concept we really need to define clearly: explainable compliance. Essentially, this means using cryptographic, sensor-backed metadata to legally prove a material's tariff-exempt status to border and trade auditors. In a world where 50% tariffs are just flying back and forth, you literally cannot just pull up to the border and say, hey, trust me, it's just scrap wood. No way. You need a digitally proven classification. That is the only way to shield these materials from getting caught in that Section 338 crossfire.
All right, let's look at Part 4, the digital refinery workflow.
Let's break down exactly how they pull this off by zooming all the way down to the micro-level execution, literally right into the hands of the yard operator. The absolutely crucial point here is that this isn't running on some massive million-dollar server farm hidden away in a bunker. The entire Edge AI stack runs natively on a Google Pixel 11 Pro with Android 17 using Light RT. It's wild. The operator just points their phone at a chaotic pile of waste, and the 9.5 Wood digital refinery workflow kicks in. Step 1, a request for quote is generated based on the AI instantly categorizing the volume and density. Step 2, the system drafts a certificate of origin. Step 3, it runs a verification pre-screening for toxicity. In Step 4, it generates a full compliance PDF output. All of this happens in less than half a second, right there in the dirt and the dust.
And the resulting PDF documentation output? It acts as an absolute mathematical and legal firewall. The UI/UX auto-generates a 6-layer document wallet. It builds a 9-point USMCA or CUSMA certificate of origin. Crucially, it classifies the load under HS code 3825.0, designating it strictly as residual waste and claims wholly obtained good status. It even legally proves the load passes Ontario Regulation 347 limits. And finally, it locks the GPS, the timestamp, and the kernel hash directly into the metadata. This document proves to any customs auditor that this truck is carrying clean wood waste feedstock and absolutely not a penalized wood product.
This creates an entirely new paradigm at the border. As the source material so brilliantly puts it, everyone else shows up at the border with a story. You show up with a passport the machine already stamped. I mean, it hits the nail on the head. When you're dealing with tense border guards and highly unpredictable tariff enforcement, hardware-verified trust is going to beat human opinion every single time. Finally, Part 5. Securing the circular bioeconomy.
The core takeaway from all of this research is profound. By operationalizing the Google Pixel 11 Pro and Light RT AI stack right at the edge, 9.5 Wood is securing Ontario's industrial leadership in the global circular bioeconomy. They are taking physical environmental compliance, which, let's face it, used to be a massive geopolitical liability, and turning it into a high-margin, heavily encrypted digital asset. This workflow completely neutralizes the threat of that cross-border capacity cliff we talked about earlier. It keeps the drain open while everyone else's just freezes solid.
So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought that you want. Could AI and digital accountability actually be the only thing standing between a functioning supply chain and an overflowing local landfill? When macro geopolitics and trade wars create total chaos, it might just be edge AI in the hands of a local yard worker that saves the day. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive explainer. It's been incredible exploring this hidden waste corridor with you, and I really hope you leave with a totally new perspective on what it actually takes to keep our cross-border supply chains moving. See you next time.